Hello there and welcome to this vlog of July 2023, and what I'd like to discuss today is a bit of a mid-year roundup for BattleTech. So several months ago, presuming it was the end of last year or the beginning of this year, I did a video and titled it something like 2023, the year of BattleTech, or something like that. So I just wanted to kind of give an appraisal of where I feel like we are at, halfway through the year now, and obviously like post the the release of the Kickstarter, which was obviously a huge event in like BattleTech's history. So this is going to be, there are going to be positives and negatives here. I'll leave the negatives to the end because I don't like to kind of focus too much on those. Although one of the negatives that I am going to talk about is quite a big one, or potentially quite a big one. In terms of orientation as well, I'm going to keep this very much to like the commercial. So I'm not going to kind of veer into like the state of the Ilkan era or the art designs for the new 2023 BattleTech or whatever. Like, they're really important and worthy of discussion. But what's a much bigger kind of umbrella issue is the commercial side of BattleTech. So, is it as a brand getting visibility by the people who would buy it and play it and, buy the books or whatever else? That's really where you have to judge it. Everything else is kind of subjective. You also have to keep in mind that with like gaming communities like ours, people tend to get very entrenched in their own opinions. So, you'll have people who only play classic BattleTech from like the very early edition rule set. They've not changed their style of play in 25 years or whatever else, and that's fine. No heat towards that, because I do something very similar. I suppose I'm an old player, so to speak. But with new people coming forward means a new kind of sales pitch to those people. So you've got to kind of ask the question then, does what we like as the older players, is that going to resonate with a younger audience, or will it disenfranchise them? So, I think commercially speaking, they're really, really big, like, touchstone issues that I'm sure that people at Catalyst and people at Tops are thinking about and strategizing for, and kind of looking over the trajectory for the next few years. So let's talk about the positives then. The positives, there are many. I think I'm going to leave the Kickstarter out of this because the Kickstarter is massively positive. I mean, there's, what more to say on that? $7.5 million, 20,000 backers, etc., etc. I want to discuss the Kickstarter though in the kind of negative column on this, or a potential negative. So we'll branch that aside. The actual Kickstarter as is though, financially and commercially, rip-roaring incredible success. But again, just ice that and place it over here for a second. I actually think a bigger news story for BattleTech in many regards was Target. If you don't know, or if you've not heard or read, I'm sure most people watch my channel do know this though, BattleTech is now shelved at Target in the US. Target being like one of the kind of household retail outlets in America. I mean, you can find them on every high street pretty much. So, massive outlet. Apparently as well, so this is what I heard. I don't know how much of this I can confirm. It's just kind of scuttlebutt that hear across the community. Target ordered like 60,000 units of what we know as the BattleTech Essentials box. So it's basically just like a starter box set. It's got 2 mechs in it, little rule set. It's basically based on the Solaris 7 campaigns. And 60,000, I think it's like the minimum order unit that Target will do, because it's so big. So they're like, yeah, we'll just have 60,000. 60,000 is fine. For most obviously retail outlets, that would just be insanely huge amount of what are quite big items as well. That take quite a bit of shelving up. I hear that it jumps off the shelf. I mean, I'm sure Target have got them all based in a repository somewhere, or maybe they kind of had 20,000 made with a view to getting 20,000 next year. I don't know how they structured it at all. usually, and from my like American friends, I'm hearing that you'll go into a Target and there'll be between like 3 and 5 on a shelf. Obviously, if you've worked in retail, you know how that works. Like when orders start getting low, computer will send a link out somewhere, and then when your next stock comes in, you'll have a couple of whatever it is that you need that's selling. Obviously, that's all determined on like sales software and interesting things like that. So if you only sell one unit of one thing a year, you're not going to put 50 of them on your shelving because that's a waste of space. But for the BattleTech situation, I think like most targets have got several in at any time, and I'm hearing that people are going into targets and they can't find it because it's sold out before they can actually get the new order in. So that's incredible. Just from like a brand perspective as well, getting CGL having stuff now at Target and at Barnes and Noble from an American's perspective is huge. They are two, especially Target, obviously a huge like retail outlet. You'd more expect it in Barnes and Noble because they do like gaming and books and cards and things like that. Target though are much more like I understand the current Target as is like a general like retail store. There are issues with that on the international front, but I'm not gonna moan about that as someone in that international kind of bracket, because if you look at like the demographic split down for people that buy BattleTech stuff, it's like something ridiculous, like 75-80% US audience. So I do not begrudge at all Catalyst having these exclusive agreements with big retail outlets in America for an IP which is American. Like the Catalyst headquarters is up in like the Northwest Pacific. I don't know if it operates out of Seattle or like a suburb of Seattle, somewhere in that neck of the woods anyway. It's obviously an IP as well that I associate very much with Chicago. Like it's a Midwest thing. That's how I've always viewed BattleTech. So it's got a core American audience. My understanding then is, and this really surprised me, and I think I may have talked about this on a previous episode of from the channel, but the UK's actually got some really big numbers now in BattleTech. In fact, for Kickstarters, we were the second highest backer, I believe, in front of Germany and Australia, which really, really surprised me, honestly. I was absolutely shocked by that. It's something that I obviously Britain has a big like tabletop wargaming community. You've got, Games Workshop 5 miles down the road from me here. The biggest tabletop gaming outfit on earth by some way. But, I always just kind of assumed that BattleTech was a real fringe IP here. But I think, as we kind of going on now and BattleTech's getting more traction, I think, and you look at Games Workshop re-releasing Epic, for instance, which is like a combined arms I think someone's actually corrected me, I think it's like an 8-9mm game, but similar scale to BattleTech. And they're doing that kind of scale though, which kind of says a lot. So maybe the UK is one of it definitely is one of their upcoming markets, but maybe it is the up and coming market. I did see as well that the head honchos from Catalyst actually did a visit to one of the big gaming conventions down here in Birmingham. I think like 1 or 2 months ago, something like that. So yeah, so it's definitely on their radar. But why I'm saying this is we cannot get these essential box sets or anything that's exclusive to Target or Barnes and Noble, because Barnes and Noble and Target do not deliver to Europe or to Western Europe. I think certain parts they do, but then certain parts they don't. No doubt it's some regulatory taxing issue or whatever. We are okay though, I think, in the BattleTech community, because I've noticed that like on eBay, some of these like options spring up. Like you'll have like a little hobby store. Well, obviously, I don't know what they do. They might go to like a convention in the US and buy like 20 of them and post them back to themselves so they can sell them over here. Generally doesn't go for stupid amounts of money either. I think the Essentials box, I'd seen it on eBay and it was going for like £40-50. So yeah, that's double the cost. But it is kind of in an international audience perspective, it's a limited market. I've got one of my like friends in the BattleTech community sends me like regular packages now for anything that kind of comes out at Barnes and Noble or at well Target as well. They'll send me like several over, and I'll usually I'll keep what I want in my forces, and then I'll sell the rest at like a reasonable rate, just because I know that, and they do go very quickly because it is difficult to get these things from America unless you've got friends out there or you visit America quite often. So I suppose that is the Target situation is a bit of a a double-edged sword to some degree, but generally speaking, it's amazing. I mean, if you'd have said to people 5 years ago that BattleTech was going to be stocked at Target, they would have laughed in your face. So, let's keep that one in mind. And again, just to reiterate that point, I think just having it on those like storefronts is just incredible news for BattleTech. I think they really outdid themselves as well on the Essentials box set, and I don't have a copy yet. I will be getting one over the next like couple of months, I'd imagine, from my friend in the US. But at the moment I've only seen like reviews of it, but it's just the artwork looks very like appealing to young people to me. Like it's very colourful and it's like in a Solaris Gladiator arena, and it just looks it's like eye capturing, right? Whereas like, and okay, I say this with a massive like caveat of I don't feel this way because I love the artwork, but like the Mercenary Kickstarter box set, which is the like the picture of the Banshee in the war zone, like I don't like little kids or like 12 to 15-year-olds probably are not going to really gravitate towards that, but they are going to gravitate towards the cool looking mechs in the big arena, all colourfully painted up, right? As opposed to the kind of military khaki style mechs and the tank, and I could be wrong there, but that's how I would like look at it. And I think you always kind of want to target to your audience, and if you're putting things on the shelves at Target, you want to kind of reach out into those wider demographics of people who are not prone to playing tabletop games but might just want to kind of dip into it. And one of the great advantages of BattleTech is that you can just play it as a regular old board game. You don't have to have, like I've got, 1,000+ mechs and vehicles. You can just have a couple of mechs and then just play right out of the box on the on the paper hex sheet. So yeah, it's a definitely that to me was the big moment anyway. In terms of I suppose like the future, I just want to discuss a couple of things. I think we have had some big news actually break over the last 12 hours. This is on the digital side of BattleTech, which is massively important because usually like the digital games or media is a method to get people into the tabletop game. Not always, but I think, obviously computer games are so popular. If you are like a big player of like the Harebrained Scheme game and you really loved it, you probably will delve a little bit deeper into the lore. Maybe, buy a game of Armoured Combat just to have it on the shelf so you can read the rules and have the primer and see what all the Inner Sphere powers are about, that kind of thing. But we got some big news from MechWarrior 5, which has kind of been... It's one of those games which was beset with problems on its release. I know a lot of people were really not keen on it, including myself. I mean, I bought it and played it initially and I found it barely usable. It was just an awful game. But subsequently, over the last like 2 or 3 years, they fixed a massive amount of it. You've obviously got like a really healthy modding community there as well. So, I mean, I use a lot of mods on there and it just makes the game eminently more enjoyable. But also it's I think the designers of the game have really kind of got it together when it comes to the DLC. The DLC as well has always been relatively cheap. They've not been silly about it. I think you could get... I think first they did the Kestrel expansion and then they did the Rasselhag expansion, and I think they got progressively better. And with that, it was something like, I don't know what it is in the US. I think it was about £10-15 over here. And you got like a multitude of new mechs, new variants, new maps, and then like a whole new set of missions to do. So, well worth it. It's not like they were charging $40-50 for it or something like that. It was affordable and it was good. And I think that from hearing it's selling very, very well. It must be selling well because they announced yesterday that they're going to do the War of 3039, which is music to my ears because those of you who know me well know that that's my favourite part of pretty much all. I think it's definitely up there as like one of my favourite like parts of BattleTech. It's just a great story. It's really well done. It's quite concise as well. It's not too complex as most great stories aren't, and just I love the characters in it. I love that they kind of turn the whole situation with the Inner Sphere on its head, where like the Davians become the bad guys in that, and then the Kurita are kind of the underdog, and it introduces really interesting characters as well, like Teddy Kurita. You might get people like Norrie Steiner crop up in there as well. So it's a really great like part of the BattleTech lore, and they announced that they are doing that. That's another huge thing for me. I think that's out in like 2 months. I think they said was it September 28th? I think I saw just off the top of my head. So it's about 2 months from here. They're also introducing that they're going to do the longbow. The longbow is one of those very derpy mechs in BattleTech that really shouldn't be a mech. It's more like a mobile LRM launcher, but I mean it's a fun mech, and it is what it is. So great. The more mechs they get in there, obviously the better. That to me, I think Rasselhag was this year as well. That was like back in February or March. So it just shows how popular that game is. If they're doing these big DLC releases every 4 to 6 months at the moment, begs the question then, are they going to pull the trigger and do the clan invasion? Or will that be MechWarrior 6? That's the question, I suppose. If I were them, and I'll speak with my heart here over my head, because I think my head would say, yeah, do MechWarrior 6 as the clan invasion because more money. Big release, that kind of thing. I actually think, though, gaming has changed a lot. Video gaming has changed a lot over the last few years. And what I mean by that is, if you look at big, successful IPs, things like Total War. Now, if you keep up to it, Total War release a Warhammer Fantasy variant of the game, which is really popular. And I've got all the DLC for that. I barely play it. I don't know why I buy it, to be honest. It's just, I'm suckered into, Total Warfare's machine. But, they'll release DLC every so often. So it might be a £5 bundle for an extra leader, or it might be £45 for literally a new game. So they'll call it Total Warfare Warhammer 3. They've done that 3 times. So the first vanilla release, and then the second and the third iteration of the game, basically, which just it created a huge expansion, but a new game with new, just everything really. And they, obviously it does take some heat, that game. I've seen a lot of people complain about it, that it's a bit too simplistic for a Total Warfare game. I probably would agree with that as well, but it still looks cool. It kind of gives you an old world Warhammer fix if you need it. And that's how they release it. So you can play 1, 2, and 3 together as one game, basically. And you can load one up and you can play the first version if you just like that in of itself, or you can just buy the second one and play the second one. So it's slightly strange how they do it, but then there's this grand campaign map that they've got, which encompasses everything from the first, the second, and the third. It's just this huge world map with every conceivable old world Warhammer faction in it now. I think they basically have got everything. I think they've even got Chaos Dwarfs now and ogres and things like that. So it really is it's fun to play that if you like that kind of thing. Why I'm telling you that is I think you could do something very similar for MechWarrior as well. So just keep the MechWarrior 5 IP, but do instead of releasing MechWarrior 6, you've got the foundation stone now to build on. So just do, bring out MechWarrior. They probably would call it MechWarrior 6, I would imagine, but have it related to the previous game. Have it so you can play the campaign right through them. I think you start in that game in 3015, and have it gravitate right up into 3050, during the clan invasion. That's what I would do if I were them anyway, because I think it's you can then keep a lot of, the mods can use the same platform, for instance. So, it will be something relatable to them. So they'll be happy about that. The community will be happier with that. You can also, if you want, you could do a grand campaign in that, where you can just play in 3025 if you want to, and you don't go forward from that timeline. Or likewise, you could just start in 3050. if you think about the opportunities that come off the back of that, then they're pretty massive, because you wouldn't just finish at the clan invasion, right? After that, you've got like Operation Bulldog, you've got the Fedcom Civil War, you've got the Jihad, you've got the Dark Age. You could in 8 years we might be on the Ilkhan era, you know. So loads and loads of opportunities to do that. If they kind of if I were them anyway, if I were designing that and I were kind of, you know, custodian it of the IP, I just look at it as like my one-stop shop for my entire BattleTech like gaming experience. I would love it if they do the same with the Harebrained Schemes game. Although saying that, we do have some absolutely brilliant mods for that now, which will kind of expand it into grand campaigns beyond 3025. But you know, obviously they only get supported by a community willing to do it. It's much better if a company can plough some money into it, get some new designs, and pay like, you know, artists to get things done like really, really at a high scale, or sorry, at a high level. So, you know, again, going back to the original point of this video, you know, in terms of BattleTech, this being our year, I think MechWarrior is proving that for sure. Or the digital side of BattleTech is certainly proving that. So, yeah, I think halfway through, great news thus far. I think on the, you know, I'll give one more positive and then we'll get into the negative. I think the one thing that I'm expecting to see, they've announced it, but I don't know when it will all get announced and when they'll, you know, publish dates for release and whatnot. We are getting specific force packs for the Inner Sphere powers. So that's going to be like a, you know, a Lyran Commonwealth force pack. I have been prattling on about this since I think this channel started, which was saying, you know, like the force packs that we get are fantastic, right? So, you know, like I'm talking about the mechs inside, the artwork, stuff like that, but they're all generic. So they're all just like in these grey or like beige boxes, which is fine. Again, that's not a problem at all. But what you then saw was a massive step up in quality when they did the mercenary box sets. So when you've got that like Northwind Highlanders box, which I got just a few days ago, delivered from, I think they're called Tistmust Games or something like that in Canada. Great company, by the way. Can't remember their exact name. It was either, oh no, sorry, it was either them or Fortress Miniatures. Can't remember. It's one of those companies. I've had both delivered to me in the past. But Fortress is certainly good as well. But one of those sent me like quite a few Northwind Highlander box sets, and what I really noticed about it was just how vibrant and beautiful the actual boxes are. And I'm thinking of it just from a retail perspective here, like that's exactly what you want to see, you know, on a shelf in a store. The previous boxes, you know, and again, it's fine because they're still catering at that point to like the core BattleTech audience, but they're kind of grey and they've got like the, you know, the blueprint designs of the mechs on them. The Northwind Highlanders one though looked special, and I've got to say as well, the Highlander in that pack is gorgeous. It's like a, I don't know, there's something about its pose. Like I wasn't keen. Well, I was. I say I wasn't keen. The old Highlander, you know, the one that came out in the Clan Invasion Kickstarter, it just lacked a bit of a dynamic pose. I like the model and I love the head of the model, but I feel like this one just looks really, really like daunting. Like it just towers over things. It's just the way its head is positioned. It's just a glorious mech. It's a glorious mech anyway, the Highlander, but that pose is beautiful. It's also stood on an urban mech, which I love. It's just stood on its head. I don't use the like the smoke plumes on there because I play like more. I don't play Alpha Strike. I play Classic on like 3D terrain, or like a variant of that. So you can't really have something high up in the air like that because otherwise it's just kind of, you know, it loses its ability to kind of get behind terrain and whatnot. Great idea though for like display models, and you know, if you just play Classic, then absolutely you can do that because you're just on a hex grid then, so it doesn't matter if it's up in the air or not. But for me, yeah, I've got 3 of them and they're all stood on those Urbies, and I'm just like, this is just incredible. What a beautiful model. Going back to the box though, I think they're going to absolutely do what they've done for those mercenary box sets in the Inner Sphere Force packs as well. So we're going to get like a blue looking, because obviously they're associated with a colour blue, like Steiner box set, and a green Capellan one. What we know about these, or the kind of, I think what we've had semi-confirmed, is that the Inner Sphere Omnimex will be in these. So just to kind of focus in on the Lyran one for a second, you will be getting the, well, I'm guessing it will be the Hauptmann. We don't know yet, but I guess it will be the Hauptmann. That is kind of the quintessential 95-ton Lyran Omnimech from like the post-Clan Invasion era. If I had to get the usual way of doing this is they'll put one new mech in a force pack and then 3 like older mechs, either new variants of or in a new pose, or like a jumping version with a plume that you can affix it to. So I guess, if I had to guess like mechs for that, you'll get 4. Obviously, it will be a Lance, and it would be I'll say it's a Zeus. I'm going to say Zeus. I'm going to say Hunchback for the Lyrans. The Hauptmann, obviously, so that's another assault. And then it will be something heavy. And I'd probably say something like a Thunderbolt. Something like that. Something like, like a big tanky heavy type mech. I think that's kind of the direction they'll go down of it. If you kind of look at like the Capellan one as well, so I'm guessing we'll get the Menchen in there. I think that would be the Omni that they'd go for, because that's quite it's an old Mech Commander 2 variant. It looks like the big like walking dinosaur. It's very, very cool, is the Menchen. And then you might get some of like those weird and wonderful like post Fedcom Civil War mechs, like the is it the Shy U? Sorry, the Fedcom Civil War, not post Fedcom Civil War. The Fedcom Civil War mechs. They might. I mean, what would be great if they put a Vindicator in there, because the only way we can get the Vindicator currently is in the like the starter set, which is a bit annoying because the Vindicator is a great mech, and if you're a Capellan player, then you really want access to that, and you're not necessarily going to want to buy loads of $25 starter sets just to get. You'd have to spend $100 to get your Lance of Vindicators, right? So it's a bit annoying. That though, I think when they release that, we're in other game changer territory then. Now the question is, are they going to do exclusivity deals, or is BattleTech now, are they going to have been able to prove at that juncture to places like Target and Barnes and Noble, where it's like, look, we can fund these ourselves, because usually how exclusivity deals will work, the store will actually front the money. So for Target have fronted the money for the Essentials box set, and then with the car, the basically the under the understanding that they are the only people that can stock it, right? For like it will probably be always the case at that level of money. I think Target will always have that. I don't think anyone else will be able to stock it. But it's not the case for the mercenary box sets. Usually, like Barnes & Noble, I think have a 6 to 9 month exclusivity deal, and then it kind of gets released into the wider market. But Barnes & Noble are the ones that front the deal. They love doing that because it gets more footfall through their stores, which if you are... I mean, I'm not in retail. I've been in retail when I was very young. But footfall is a massive thing in retail, and really kind of important to metrics of success. So, will we therefore, are we going to see those like Innisphere force packs at Target, is what I'm trying to get at. A Target just going to say, yeah, we'll have 60,000 of them or whatever. And then I think we're in a game-changing territory. And this is why I think, yes, 2023 is going to be that year. The year that we look back to and be like, oh, that's when it all happened. Because if you've got like an entire, just, like a regular old shelf space section in Target, and it's just got the Essentials box set, and it's got all 5 of the Innisphere powers there, and some of the mercenary box sets, and some dice and thing, just, I'm getting not a massive section, but just like a nice healthy section of like constant BattleTech on the store, where kids are just seeing that branding all the time, and then they're getting back into the house, putting Steam on, and suddenly MechWarrior 5 flashes up, and they're like, oh, I saw that in the Target, right? So it's just that getting that kind of brand recognition out on all the time, and I think that's where the 2023 is that year now, beyond anything to do with like the Kickstarter, which is kind of within a vacuum to some extent, because it's got like a shelf life. Obviously the IP doesn't have a shelf life. The IP, it did nearly die like a decade ago, but now it's very, very healthy IP and worth a lot of money. So yeah, everything's going, I think, as I expected. I'm just really interested to see what the latter half of the year now brings, especially in regards to those force packs. And I think MechWarrior 5, are we going to get like are they going to do the Clan Invasion as MechWarrior 6 next spring? could be, and that will be a big thing as well. I know the community is clamoring for that, and then I think that MechWarrior series, I'm not talking about the ones from the 90s or the early 2000s, the current iteration of that, which has had its problems. I think at that point they really will have done themselves proud, because they will have completely turned it around, and they've even onboarded people like me, and I'm not a massive shooty game player or anything like that. Obviously, because I do the BattleTech stuff and I've got the channel and I work with DFA and things of that nature, I like to keep up with it, so I will play it through. Even if it's not my jam, I'll still do it just to kind of keep up with things. Right, anyway, sorry, we are half an hour into this video, and now I'm going to have to deal with a negative. Okay, before I say this, I just want to say that I could very well be wrong here, right? So keep that in mind. You also know me well enough, if you've watched my channel or content before, I am not some kind of hyperbole YouTube idiot, right? So I'm not I try not to do any kind of clickbaity stuff. It's just me talking to the camera. I don't even edit videos, so you just get me completely unscripted and, raw. Horrifying. But yeah, there you are. That is as it is. So I will speak my mind on things, but I do have a concern on the Kickstarter at the moment. But again, I'm saying this from, more from the heart, because I don't know. It's just I've got a little bit of the fear at the moment, and I'm going to talk you through that. So what I've noticed over the last few weeks is that the comms from Catalyst has just dried up. That to me is always a worrying sign, because that means people are too busy to do the comms. That's working in that environment. I can tell you now that's the case, right? If you're dealing with a crisis, you have to make sure that what you are then going out and saying publicly marries up with what is the truth, or what you want people to think is the truth, at least if you're in the PR business anyway. So, and we've had very little. There was this constant plethora of every 3 to 5 days. Oh, we're doing this. We're reopening the thing. We're doing the la la la. Then it's just gone completely dry. Now, I noted that I sent an email through the Kickstarter just with a query on there about the salvage boxes 2 weeks ago. Never got a reply. Now, I'm not here to moan about that, because I know how busy they will be. But keep in mind that a month ago I sent them another. I've only sent 2 emails. I'm not some kind of email jockey with them. I've sent 2 emails, and I did spend nigh on £2,500 on the Kickstarter. So I feel like I'm entitled to 1 or 2 emails, right? But I'm not going to be hammering them every day. Is what I'm saying. I'm not that kind of person. They got back to me on the first request in 5 hours, something like that. Now we're in 2-week territory, which kind of tells me a lot about the amount of comms that they are getting. And I'm slightly worried about the Kickstarter and the kind of underlying technology that they've got to do it. And I'll tell you why this first of all, the email thing was a bit of a red flag for me. Ooh, yeah, this doesn't look great. Secondly, though, when the Kickstarter reopened, which I then went into and did all my options, got the email back from Catalyst, directly, and it kind of gives your order. That completely married up with what I had ordered. But then on BackerKit, I think they call it, I went into there just to have a look, and it's basically got all my options incorrect, which is quite concerning. Now, let me break that down, because it's not as bad as that sentence would imply, but I'll tell you what's happened. I bought 1 regiment and 3 battalions. That's a lot of stuff, and it's a lot of stuff to manage as well. And, I'm acutely aware of that. I've got to put the hours in to make sure that this goes right. You can't just, spend that much money on something like this, and expect it's going to be automated. You have to make choices. You have to do Q&As. Fine. But in the backer kit, my regiment was fine. That came back it says, your regiment is here, and it tallies up with what I've done. The first battalion that I bought, fine, was the same. The second and the third battalion were just repeats of the first battalion that I'd ordered. So now I'm thinking, am I going to get... So what's right? Is the Catalyst email right, where it literally talks through every every extra battalion that I bought, and it gives my bespoke order? Or is the backer kit right, where the backer kit has basically just duplicated my battalion 3 times? Now, let me be clear about this. If I got my battalion 3 times, so like the same stuff, yes, I would be peevish about that, because I've got like bespoke things in there. It's like I've got like plans, and I'm a methodical planner, right? So like at the back of me up here, right, you've got like the Fedcom badge just there, right? Sorry, not Fedcom, it's the Federated Sons. I've kind of, to reflect the Dustcounters mercenary unit, they're affiliated with certain powers. So like the St. Ives Compact, for instance. And I've bought all these little patches that I'm going to put up there decoratively. And they're all the ones that I want, that reflect like the Dustcounters and where they come from and whatnot. They're really hard to get these outside of the Kickstarter. So if that order goes wrong, I'm probably not going to be able to do that. Is that the worst thing in the world? No. I can live with that. I'm not going to throw a tantrum about it. Another factor as well, if they just sent me, say, 60% of the correct stuff and 40% of the stuff I don't want, I'll just sell it all on eBay and I'll buy it all when it comes out. So, yes, it would be a pain in the backside. No, it wouldn't be great. But it's not the end of the world for me personally. But for some people, this might be horrific. Right? Like if they get it wrong, or the orders are wrong, and it's been like automated incorrectly, we are going to have severe drama, because I'm very much on the laissez-faire end of this. Things happen, and as long as, I'd be super annoyed obviously if nothing came to me and I spent $2,500 and nothing turned up. I'd be irate, but that's not going to happen. What might happen though is that they get some of the order wrong, because the backer kit system is, to me, it's terrible. I think they've made a massive mistake by that. We're going with that company. I don't know if they even have an option. I know it's absolute dross. They can't, this all kicked off when they realised that people who had bought extra battalions like I had done could not get a salvage point for any of the Inner Sphere Force packs that they bought, which was kind of a little bonus that you got. So we lost out on that, although they've tried to remedy that. It looked like it was remedied. When I kind of went through the software, it looked like I was able to then pick that salvage, but I wasn't 100% sure. And it was basically just a mess. And I think from day one, the second they got the backer kit involved in this, it's been a disaster. I'm pretty good at this kind of stuff, because I deal with a lot of these kind of technologies at work. So I kind of know what they're trying to do. It's just they've either Catalyst haven't tested it properly, or they've not put too much forethought into it in regards to the little things that could happen, like the salvage points, like this, like if everyone has got the same thing as me now and has had their order duplicated multiple times, that means that, well, thousands of people are going to get the wrong orders, or now are going to be screaming at Catalyst saying, is my order wrong? Right? And that's where I think we are in treacherous water here, because what they said initially is that the Kickstarter would close at the end of July. You can bet your bottom dollar it won't be closing anytime soon if they've got a problem with it, because they're going to have to keep it open. If they keep it open, say, indefinitely over the next, short-term periods, like going into autumn, that's going to delay everything. And I think the general consensus is, and I said this recently on a vlog, was that Catalyst had really kind of started to do all the prep. They had the factories in China churning out the plastics already. It won't matter a damn if the orders are all messed up. And this is a lot of orders. You are talking about tens of thousands of lines of code. It's probably done through Excel. So, like my order, it will give my name, my address, and then it will just give Inner Sphere Recon Lance 6, whatever. And that's will then get fed to the factory. They'll then produce, they'll always have a surplus because they'll be selling at retail, obviously, later on. But then that data goes to the people who distribute across the different nodes across the world. And then when the final dude gets my order and it's 6 heavy recon, put them in there. If that is messed up or it has gone wrong, there's going to be a ton of wrong orders. And frankly, and this is not me being hyperbolic here, this is just the truth. If they mess up a $7.5 million Kickstarter, they will lose the IP. It's that serious. Like, if Tops get wind that there is a problem here and that they're going to have a mass complaint, potential drama of an unspecified level, then yeah, that's it. It's over. Like, all the good work that Catalyst have done will just be disappeared. Not BattleTech. I'm talking about what the current regime and how much they have done. If this goes south, which at the moment, and again, I am not that type of person. I'm not someone who's going to come on here and be like, fire and brimstone or panicking. But I just get the impression that there is a significant problem in that software and are they now going to be able to remedy that? Even on the first Kickstarter was relatively small in the grand scheme of things. And, you probably could have gone through all the code on that. I had a couple of people, like, data cleansers or whatever, just to go through and tally everything up. If Catalyst do that now, it's going to cost them a ton of money. But more importantly, it's going to cause delays. Massive delays, potentially. I hope I am wrong. That's what I'm going to say here. I hope that this is just me, reading the wrong signals or whatever. But just from what I've had back from and seen in the backer kit with the incorrect order, and then what I've seen from the, like the lack of comms. And if you go onto like the Kickstarter page, I think a lot of people are saying, why aren't you replying to my message, etc., etc. It just seems to me like we might be in for a bit of drama here. So brace yourself for that. Obviously, it's not up for me to tell people how to respond for this because you spend your money, so you reply as you want. If you want to be angry about it and start shouting at people, that is your prerogative. My suggestion is that we don't do that and that you allow Catalyst just to kind of work through it and accept that, I'll say, okay, I'm going to say this in like small caps, right? Like, yeah, okay, I will give them the benefit of the doubt that they are a small company, but they still, this is going to sound really nasty as well, they still operate like a small company, but they are not a small company anymore. Right, if you're doing Kickstarters over 7.5 million, and remember that's just a Kickstarter, we don't have any of their details on retail. That company will be making tens of millions every year. Now, I know that Tops are going to have some of that and that you've got to pay your staff or whatever, but it is, and they have certainly expanded the team, but I still get this optic from Catalyst that it's just gamers having fun, and it worries me because what you'll see in the community, it's like people will be like, yeah, they're just gamers, then people always put a positive spin on it. I don't want gamers having fun organising my $2,500 Kickstarter, thank you very much, right? I want professional people who understand IT and like software systems and manufacturing contracts and the legalities of all this. And I know they understand a lot of that stuff for sure. I mean, whenever I have dealt with them or I've heard them, they have got their heads screwed on for sure. So it's no heat to them, or I'm not saying that they are not capable. They absolutely are capable, but you can't just run this like out of your garage anymore, guys, right? If that's what's happening here. This should now be the signal that you need, that you take the Games Workshop direction. If you go to Games Workshop in Nottingham, just down the road from me, hire hundreds of people full time, and like Catalyst has still got like just like they pay people. I mean, they've got full-time members of staff, obviously, but like all their artists are just kind of paid on commission. I understand, and I just feel like let's create something here, like reinvest that money now, and I'm sure they're going to reinvest some of it back, but take a punt on it. And this isn't even Catalyst issue, really. It's more Tops that maybe need to get this messaging out there. Like, you are sat on something here that is potentially hugely profitable and successful, but it needs investment. I think Catalyst do need help with this. I think it's, it's like, I can only equate it to this, right? Like the company that I work for, and this is all public knowledge, our turnover in a year is approximately $130 million, which for a law firm is relatively small, right? You know, not small, but we're a small, medium law firm, right? In like the grand scheme of things. My previous law firms were the biggest on earth. So I've worked for law firms that take in $1.5 billion a year. So, you know, like it's whatever, you know, different levels, whatever. In my company now, we've got like I think over 1,500 staff members, you know, for a $150 million operation, turnover, not profit. Catalyst now, my understanding is that they only employ like, I'm guessing it's dozens of people, you know, and I don't even know if they include like the short-term contract people in there or the artists on commission or whatever. And their company now is getting up into the tens of millions. So somewhere along that line, there has to be a full like infrastructure reevaluation in terms of the process on what they are doing, how they are doing it, and most importantly, system testing. Because if they'd have tested the system correctly between how the Kickstarter and the backer kit line up together, they'd have realised very, very quickly that the two don't mix and that you couldn't pick salvage points on the software used on backer kit. And it's the workaround for that. And I think the marketing director at Catalyst sent some comms out about this, which basically said the last thing we want to do is kind of to go into the, you know, the data stream and start fixing stuff, because a lot of problems can happen. And she's absolutely right. You really don't want to do that. It all has to be automated beforehand. And you know, and you have to trust that software, and most importantly, you have to test that software. And I just don't get the impression that they've got, for want of a better term, the boots on the ground to do that. And that's where I am concerned now, that the IP of BattleTech, the integrity of BattleTech is all tied into this Kickstarter, because anyone that's going to be into a top end user in the BattleTech IP and buys the video games, the tabletop stuff, they're going to have backed this Kickstarter. And if it all goes south now and we are hit with a problem or a major delay or something like that, it's going to be pretty catastrophic for the IP, and especially for Catalyst. I mean, I will put my cards on the table here. If this goes wrong, they will lose it. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind about that. Companies like Topps, they will suffer no fools on this. If they've seen like a multi-million pound industry or IP attached to their multi-million pound industry that then has its integrity threatened, and they come out of this with bad PR, because it will be Topps that people direct fire to as well, then yeah, bad things will happen and we'll be in a negative spiral. I hope to God that does not happen though, and I'm kind of said this under many caveats of I could be wrong, I hope I am wrong, but I do see some slight red flags raised at the moment. Anyway, I'll end it there. I really would like to reiterate all those positive factors that I said at the beginning. I don't want to kind of leave it on a massively negative note. It's just, I suppose, areas of concern. But generally speaking, I think 2023 is, you know, standalone, outside of what happens with a Kickstarter, has been a phenomenal year and will continue to be a phenomenal year. I just hope to God that the Kickstarter sees through and there are no major problems with it. Anyway, on that note, I will end it, and I will thank you very much for watching, and I'll hopefully catch you again next time.